Hey everyone, and welcome to GFC, the latest podcast on German football culture. My name is Rick, speaking to you from sunny and hot California, and I'm here with my good friend Alex.
That's right. Hi everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Alex, and as usual, I am tuning in from Germany this time. And Rick and I, of course, prepared another great episode for you guys today.
Yeah, spot on, Alex. As some of you might already know, we usually cover match highlights of the past week, fan activities, arising issues within the league and our clubs, before we round up our episodes by looking at watchworthy matchups ahead. But this week, it's all different.
That's right. So we want to use the off weeks where the German leagues are actually pausing to provide you with some special feature episodes. That means from time to time, we will invite interesting guests, for example, fans, players, or coaches, or we do a deep dive into other interesting topics surrounding the German football universe to bring that, cultural aspect of German football as close to you guys as possible.
Absolutely. And since the transfer period just ended on August 31st, we wanted to share our thoughts on the latest roster changes and a few selected teams and how that might impact their season in the first special episode of GFC. But before we get started, just a shout out to our regular visitors. This is only episode 3, and we received a lot of love from you guys, a lot of support already. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we hope you will tune into future episodes as well.
All right. Yeah, thank you guys. Same here. We received a lot of very productive and positive feedback. I'm glad you like it. And please reach out, talk to us, let us know what you want to hear. And why don't we get started, Rick?
Sure, let's kick it off, guys. I love speculating about teams and their successes early on in the season, Alex, even though we usually really know where the team stands once the games are on twice a week. For those, that are playing multiple competitions and when the first injuries kick in. But still, it's so much fun to just see and speculate where teams might be going this season. So I'm really excited about this transfer special episode today.
Yeah, and it's usually, towards the late September, early October, when, as you said, the first couple of games have been played, and you kind of get a feel where the journey is going for the teams. But nevertheless, the gut feeling about those teams who made good business, who signed good new players, or were able to keep their teams together, or the ones that might be struggling a lot, because of various reasons, like they might have lost some of their key players. That gut feeling is not always wrong. And today we want to share our thoughts.
Mm-hmm. No, in fact, sometimes it's really spot on. I'm just thinking about a few of these experts that called Leverkusen as a potential title contender early on last season. That was... it was pretty spot on. And I honestly, if you would have asked me last year if Leverkusen can win the German title, I would have said never, ever. But you look back and, again, some of these folks were spot on. So it's fun to speculate.
Exactly. But yeah, before we jump in and name our transfer winners or losers or our question marks, or some of the teams, that still kind of puzzle us where we don't exactly know where the season is going. We also want to, of course, make sure to keep you updated on some other burning topics, which are still being discussed, even though it's an international break and the leagues are not playing this weekend or haven't played last weekend. There's still a lot going on. And of course, it's our job to cover all of that.
Certainly. And why don't we start by apologizing to the audience for saying this week's was actually a week of international friendlies. Of course, guys, it's the European national teams that are playing this week, not for friendlies, but for the Nations League, which is a competition. I think it's going in its 3rd round now. Yeah. A lot of teams haven't really been taking it serious. And, it was also something that was not perceived very well within many fan bases. People were saying, again, this is just another competition that nobody needs, but it's not international friendlies. It's not World Cup qualifiers. It's the Nations League. And yeah, we stated that wrong last week, so I wanted to make sure we correct that.
Yeah, exactly. Apologies for that. And yeah, you're right. The tournament, it started slow, but I think at least after last year's competition, it has gained some sort of momentum. I also believe that some of the teams in the lower divisions, like at least section C and D, I believe, they also have the opportunity to qualify for international tournaments through this competition. So yeah, while it may just seem like another addition to the match calendar, and last week we covered that topic in a little more detail, it's still more games, but we end up watching them anyway because we're just crazy about football. So I believe both of us were sitting in front of the TV this past weekend and watching the Germans play their game against Hungary. So yeah, did you see the German performance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were completely right. I did end up watching it, also because I wanted to see how are they performing after this European Championship, where, especially for Germany, it was kind of a reset, right? We had that home tournament, and a year ago, I think German football was on its lowest level it has ever been, to be honest. We lost 4-1 against Japan, and the coach got sacked after this. Hansi Flick had to leave the national team, and we had that restart under Rudi Völler and now with new national coach Julian Nagelsmann. So that got me excited about the Germany team again, seeing the changes that Nagelsmann had made and the European Championship they had played. But I still wanted to see how are they going to go into this Nations League and the World Cup qualifiers ahead. Are they going to take it serious? You know, a lot of media coverage was around, are we going to see the players, in the middle of their league calendar and all these matchups that they're going to have ahead in Champions League and Bundesliga? Are we going to see them compete on the highest level? And I have to say, it was a really good match, and the guys played their heart out. I think you saw a high quality game, and towards the end, Germany was ahead 1-0 after the first half and then scored 2-0. And then in minute, I think it was around minute 60 where Hungary started falling apart and the German class really came through. The game ended 5-0, and I think it's a great start into Nations League, and we'll have a lot of fun with this new German squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I also enjoyed watching it. Of course, Musiala and Wirtz were the two top players. Once again, these two young guys, it's just amazing to see them play together. It's just so much fun. You can really tell they're still having fun playing together on the pitch, even at that high level. And given that they're just, in their early 20s, I think they both turned 21 last year. I believe we will have a lot more fun with these two guys. And Havertz, by the way, I have to point out his performance. I was very pleased to see him getting a lot of support from his comrades. He could have scored at least 3 goals. I think he hit the post twice. Another very close shot from a difficult angle. And then the fifth goal of the night was his. I think he got the penalty. He was fouled in the box, took the ball, and he just scored very routine goal. You can see that he's been performing at a high level for many years. I was always kind of waiting for him to really break through. I'm a big fan of Havertz because I like players who make things look easy, and he is one of them. Sometimes it appears as if he's a bit bored, but he's just so creative. He always got an idea. He's always in the zone, and I hope that he's going to play a much bigger role in the team going forward.
But look, Alex, for me, it's also about where he's playing, right? I know in at Arsenal, he has that number 9 position, and he's more effective in the Premier League on that position. But I do feel his spot is more the number 10 position and playing behind, a true number 9. And I'm a huge fan, as you know, of Niklas Füllkrug, and I think that game showed again why it's so important to have that number 9, that true number 9 that can hold a ball, that can make space for others, for those players that are good in one-on-one situations, and he just always draws an extra defender on him, and it creates that space for other players such as Havertz, such as Wirtz and Musiala. And if you just see how many times Musiala and Havertz were also able to bring Füllkrug in a scoring position in the box, then that's, we really got some weapons up there. So I do like the combination best with Havertz behind the number 9. And for me, Füllkrug should be always starting 11, should be that box player for Germany.
Yeah, I agree. It's fascinating how many good players we have who can fill one of those 3 positions in the offensive midfield. Just think about the wingers that have not been nominated this time for the team. Last week we discussed that Leroy Sané and Serge Gnabry have yet again not been nominated. I think Sané, despite being, he's such a gifted player, but for some reason he's just not as effective as he should be. And with the current team performing at this level, it's going to be really difficult for him to get back into the team. And think about the Euros. He was subbed on a couple of times and didn't really make a difference either. So Sané is going to have a hard time returning to that team, and it's just packed with quality. So I'm personally not concerned about the German national team putting together a very decent squad for the upcoming World Cup in North America.
Absolutely. And that level of competition is important, I think. Like I said, it adds to really putting out 100% for every friendly, for every Nations League game. And not taking that lightly and saying, I'm just going to focus on the next tournament because I have my position in this team no matter what. So that is very important. And then there's another young generation right behind that's pushing. I watched a little bit of the under-21 game against Israel, some of the highlights there. And again, if you look at the also a guy like Paul Wanner that we discussed last week, who could become the shooting star of this Bundesliga season. You have folks with Gruda, with Rocco Reitz that can play those offensive positions as well. So on the offensive side, we have more than enough quality players. I just hope we can fill, the back a little bit more. I'm more concerned about defense.
Yeah. To be honest, I think if our defense doesn't get injured, I think it's still a very stable defense line. When you think about, I believe Rüdiger and Tah are going to be the central defenders, and behind them you have guys like Robin Koch, you have Nico Schlotterbeck, you have Niklas Süle, who I think we'll probably talk about him later on during this episode, who has kind of returned as a different human being from the summer break. So who knows? I think there's still a bunch of very gifted players in the defense, on the German defense, that have a chance to make it on the team. And yeah, he might just be one of them.
Absolutely agree. Shifting focus here a little bit, Alex, that game in Düsseldorf was another hot summer night, and similar to us over here in California, now Germany's been going through a heat wave as well. And some of these summer games caused various discussions, right? From the Champions League final, I believe a year ago or 2 years ago, that Europa League final between Frankfurt and Glasgow in Spain a few years back. There's been these hot football nights, and water has been an issue in the European stadiums. So now there's a new initiative, and I know you wanted to talk about this a little bit. So why don't you fill us in what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rick, for that introduction. Water has become, for some reason, a luxury good almost when you think about it. I was in a stadium last week. It was also a very hot day. I was in a stadium on the first match day of the German Cup, in a stadium that didn't have a roof, also a very hot summer day. And, I saw people fainting. I saw people losing consciousness because they were simply dehydrated. And at the same time, a half-liter cup of water cost between 4 and 5 euros in most stadiums, not even counting in the deposit. Typically, you pay a deposit of 1 to 2 euros per cup. So, although some clubs have at least temporarily reduced the price of water during these hot match day weekends, it's not the case everywhere. And people then, for various reasons, tend to not drink enough water. Nevertheless, in my opinion, water should always and permanently be discounted and should always be quickly available to all stadium visitors. That means putting up some drinking water fountains could help. In fact, German team SC Freiburg have put up a few of those, and those are particularly suitable for this specific purpose, right? Fans can drink directly from the water dispenser, or they can fill up their own cup with proper high quality drinking water. It's free of charge, and they don't have to go into a filthy toilet and fill up the cup from the tap. Sometimes you and we've been to, I believe, many away sectors in our life, and
Right.
The bathrooms are typically those places you don't want to drink or eat inside anything. It's just that.
Yeah, it just puzzles me, right, to even talk about this, living now for good 8 years in North America, where that is absolute standard, that water is handed out for free in every restaurant, in any public space. You found these water fountains in a park or sports fields, etc. So it really puzzles me, and some of our listeners might think now, what are these guys talking about? But yeah, it's true. In Europe, it's just not standard to receive water for free. And at times, a water costs more than a beer. That is a true stereotype.
That's the irony.
And a lot of football fans just opt for, a good and delicious beer. But on these hot days, that can turn sideways really quick. So it should absolutely become a standard with rising temperatures that water is just handed out for free in these stadiums.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so for this reason, a group of fans here in Germany have actually started a petition where they're signing, signatures to call on the Bundesliga clubs to kind of create similar offers for their fans to the ones that you just described, and offer water at least at a reduced price or even completely for free on a permanent basis. So, to all the listeners out here, I just signed the petition today, and we will try and find a way. It's on change.org. You can obviously find it yourself, but we can just put the link on our YouTube channel so you guys can, raise your voice or sign the petition. And hopefully soon enough, we guys here in Europe or in Germany will receive free water during football games. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Absolutely. Yeah, and just going through my list here a little bit, Alex, to see what else we have under this general part here. I mean, like you said, a lot of things happened this week. One thing that might be interesting is the first coaching change of the season. Last week we addressed Darmstadt and the coach Lieberknecht leaving the team after 3 years, making room, for another coach that can hopefully bring Darmstadt back up in the Bundesliga again. And Darmstadt has decided this week and hired Florian Kohlfeld as the coach. Yeah, Florian Kohlfeld started his career with Bremen, former goalie for Werder Bremen as well. Then had another Bundesliga appearance in Wolfsburg, which was not that successful. I think his most successful time actually was with Werder Bremen. That he almost brought into the Europa League in one season, but then the season after, right before relegation, made room for Schaaf back then, I believe, that eventually went down with Werder Bremen. So, long story short, overall, his Bundesliga stats as a coach are so-so, with some successes, but also a lot of unsuccessful periods. And then his last appearance was in Belgium for a club called Eupen, which he got laid off after a couple of months as well. So now he's back in Bundesliga 2 for Darmstadt. And I'm curious, Alex, what do you think about this personnel decision there in Darmstadt and where you see them going under Kohlfeld?
Yeah, well, you kind of described him quite well by saying so and so. That's pretty much exactly my thoughts of Florian Kohfeldt. When he was the coach at Werder Bremen, I thought he was one of those guys who would just, put in the big circus of the Bundesliga way too early. It just makes sense to start a little slower and then work your way up to the Bundesliga. And this is really where the proper talented coaches can make a difference. So I think for his career, it might in fact be helpful to take a step back and kind of start things over again. But nonetheless, if you would ask me what Florian Kohfeldt's coaching profile looks like, I probably wouldn't be able to give you an answer. And Mr. Kohfeldt, if you're listening out there, I apologize sincerely, but I wish you best of success at Darmstadt.
Yeah, so I do like this guy as a person as well. I mean, he's a very sympathetic guy, right? So I wish him the best, and hopefully this can be a successful stage in his career. But we will watch as usual. And thanks for the small correction here as well, Alex. I think I called him Kohlfeld.
There you
which
go.
Would be cabbage field in German. That's not his name. It's Florian Kohfeldt. Yeah, but one more thing, as we're in this general category for our US listeners, we thought it might be interesting to touch real quick again on Kaiserslautern. We mentioned to you before the German-American club due to its proximity to the Ramstein Air Base. And the team just did its annual visit to the air base to connect with its American fan base again. Those soldiers currently stationed in Ramstein. So this has been an annual event for the team now, and just shows again how much they appreciate the Americans coming to the stadium on a regular basis, and how much they want to build their presence in the US going forward. So really nice event. We are going to feature some of the things that we discussed on our Facebook going forward. So if you go on our Facebook page, German Football Culture, you will see some pictures regarding the topics that we discussed in last week's episode. And we will also post some pictures of the official SFC Kaiserslautern Instagram page or Facebook page, showing those pictures of the team visiting the base. So you just have some additional material to review as you watch or listen to our episodes here. But Alex, anything to add to that, or pretty straightforward?
No, you summarized it well. I think it's just so cool that Ramstein and Kaiserslautern are really so well connected and so close to each other. Again, in this wider Kaiserslautern or K-Town, how they call it, military community. There are over 50,000 American service members currently stationed there. So it's not only soldiers or Air Force members, it's also civilians. It's of course a lot of families, and many Americans have decided to stay in Germany and settle around the area. So also in my last visits to the Betzenberg Stadium, I've seen so many, Americans and English speakers who most likely come from Ramstein or nearby to see K-Town playing. it's really refreshing to know that this is an annual event and the club is actively seeking that connection. So I'm hoping that we can also kind of contribute to that. So really good to see.
Okay, and I actually looked at my sheet here one more time, and I saw there was another topic that we probably should touch on real quick. I think it's a very important topic for the international listener audience. Again, it's the intent of Bayern Munich to market their own games internationally. And just to give you a little bit of a background here, Bayern was really upset last season after the failed investor negotiations. For some context, again, the DFL, or the official league corporation of the Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2, was looking for an investor. A lot of private equity companies were targeted there, including BlackRock, for example. And the goal was to use some of that money for digitalization and expansion in other markets. And we saw huge fan protests. So anyone that was watching last season will remember we saw tennis balls, candy, everything flying on the field, interrupting the games. It was usually the active, organized support in the stadium that was protesting against this investors deal. And many clubs actually stopped supporting the deal after they talked to their fans and just saw the level of backlash and level of upset this had created within the more traditional fan base, that community-oriented side of German football, I shall say. An investor's deal of such magnitude just raised concern of more games going abroad, different game times that makes it difficult for certain fans to follow and watch their teams live. So all of that led to basically the end of the negotiations and the DFL pulling out of the investors deal. But now Bayern said, okay, if we don't find a common approach as Bundesliga, we still want to go that route. We need to internationalize more. We want to compete on the highest level, especially with the Premier League. And we want to continue competing for the Champions League. So we need that extra money. And I do understand that point of view as well. So again, Alex, here we find ourselves with a very complex topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the fans are afraid that the Germany becomes a sellout. And I do remember some times when the German Bundesliga 2 was playing a game on a Monday evening for live TV purposes. It was just terrible. You essentially needed almost always a day of leave from work in order to visit the game, especially if it was an away game. And fans are afraid that these type of things may return. But obviously, when we talk about Bayern, these guys, of course, operate and play in a different league. You can't compare the financial power and the magnitude of this club with any other club in Germany. If they will do it, it will just elevate them even further and will create another big gap between Bayern Munich and the rest of the Bundesliga. So we'll keep an eye on that. To be absolutely honest, I don't have a very clear opinion on it. As similar to you, I kind of understand both sides. I do appreciate that the Bundesliga has kept something very unique, and that is exactly that cultural element which we're always referring to. But on the other hand, nowadays it's a money business, and you only compete every year for the Champions League if you're up there with the biggest clubs like Real Madrid and Manchester City, which are probably the biggest contenders for that title this day and age. Yeah.
On top of that, right, most of us fans appreciate playing internationally. There's nothing more fun than, traveling a game, taking a week in Spain and watching your team play in Sevilla or Sevilla, I should say, or I don't know, in Barcelona. If you look at Frankfurt back then, with how many people, at least 30,000 in the stadium.
30 to 40,000. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah. But you don't just get there by accident. or by just by folklore. You need to spend some money, unfortunately, and that money needs to come from somewhere.
But then look at Heidenheim, right? Or again, I hate to use Kaiserslautern as an example again because we discussed them quite a bit, but they made it to the German Cup final last year as a second Bundesliga team. If they pull up a miracle in 90 minutes and they beat Bayer Leverkusen, which at the end the game only ended 1-0, right? Leverkusen got a red card, and who knows, with a little bit luck, maybe we go into extra time, maybe they win it in penalty shootout, and all of a sudden they play in Europe. So there are these competitions, and there are these still these possibilities also for a team like Heidenheim, just having a good tight team and good camaraderie and playing it up to the seventh place in the table and making Europe this season. So I think this is something that we should still keep. And if you widen the gap even more, right, then that's becoming more and more unrealistic or harder to achieve. So at some level, the Bundesliga needs to progress with these innovations as well, by at the same time maintaining, like the culture that we stand for, the community that has been created amongst those fan bases, and the deep identification those fans have with their clubs, and also the ambition to be there every game, no matter what day and what time it's being played. So that's a very big task for the CEOs over there at the DFL, the German Football Corporation, again for the Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2. And we shall see how they will manage that over the next years.
Yeah, I agree. In my view, it should be either all the clubs or none of the clubs, but not a single one or two that have the financial power and the standing to do it on their own. It has to be either the whole league with a reasonable model that works for everyone, or we just accept that we have to go we have to find a different way to make the Bundesliga attractive internationally.
No. And it might be just one of these things where Bayern is just threatened again to go their own way to, push everyone else over the edge and start a discussion again. Who knows? But yeah, we really got to go and continue with our transfer special. Just one little update on the Mauro Vuskovic case before we do that. Today, the news came out that his club, Hamburg SV, took the decision to terminate the contract with the player. But at the same time, they extend the contract from 2026 onwards. So a big sign, and a lot of expert panels had discussed this case last week again. So it really looks like this doping case was not handled correctly. And it looks like he, at least in the club's perspective, that he's innocent. So if that's really the case, I mean, kudos to HSV for supporting the player and even extending then the contract again once they're able to in 2026, and standing by his side. I think that's huge.
Yeah, agree. Very elegant move, and they're offering him a perspective to return to the team when his 4-year ban is over. So thumbs up, Hamburg.
Very good. Okay. Let's go into our transfer special part then.
GFC special. Winners and losers of the past transfer period.
Alex, why don't you kick this off for us? Who are your winners, losers, and what teams are you not sure about so early in the season?
All right. Let me start off with my personal transfer winner of the season is Eintracht Frankfurt, a team that has been doing very smart and quite successful transfer business over the last couple of years, both through sales but not only sales, but also very smart loan deals. This time around, they managed to keep the core team together. They again qualified for a European competition last season. Most importantly, their last season's top scorer, Omar Mamouche, decided to stay with Frankfurt. Apparently, he had some offers from the Premier League teams, but he's going to be a part of the Frankfurt squad this season as well. They once again made a very big sale, just like last year where they sold Randal Kolo Muani to PSG. This time they sold one of their defenders, William Pacho, also to PSG for 40 million euros. And they did that after only after Pacho only played 1 year at the club. So on top of that, they made a massive transfer profit, which they were able to obviously reinvest. And one of the key signings this season was, again, from PSG, ironically, Hugo Ekitike as a young French striker. He was on loan already for 6 months. He came to Frankfurt last winter, and now they were able to sign him on a permanent basis. Already in the first few games of the season, he showed that he has a massive talent, and I think it's going to be a very nice partnership with Omar Mamouche up there in the front. And I think Frankfurt is probably a contender for another EuroLeague or potentially even the Champions League rank in the Bundesliga. Frankfurt's team this year is on average only 24.3 years old. They also signed a bunch of young and exciting players. For example, one of the most exciting signings as well comes from Bundesliga 2, which is Can Uzun from FC Nürnberg. He's played a very decent role at Nürnberg last year, and a few more young talented players were added to the squad. Last year, I believe they signed this guy Larsson, one of Sweden's top talents, and I believe he also scored a goal just this past weekend. Only 20 years old. I believe his market value is also already exceeding the 40 million, so it might be another very lucrative sale next year if he performs well. So yeah, exciting team. And to just top that off, they also signed just this week another former Bundesliga player, former Dortmund and Mönchengladbach midfielder Mo Dahoud. And he already kind of hosted an unforgettable press conference at Frankfurt. So some of you might have seen it on the socials. If not, check it out. You might have a good laugh.
Yeah. He was speechless.
Indeed. Yeah, very much so. All right. Moving on to my second winner of the season is Bayer Leverkusen. Of course, the reigning champion. So one would expect a lot of activity on the transfer market and potentially also a lot of players leaving the club to join better or bigger clubs in England and Spain. But Leverkusen actually managed to keep their core team together, which the same team that won them their first Bundesliga title ever. And in addition to that, they signed a few very selected players that coach Xabi Alonso had specifically requested to be added to the team. For example, Spanish midfielder Alex Garcia from Girona, another team in Spain that I think ended up qualifying for the Champions League. I believe Leverkusen already tried to sign him last year, but weren't successful. This year, he made the move eventually. They also bought another top talent from France, only 19-year-old central defender Belosian from Stade Rennes. And on the other hand, they also made a few smart sales. In fact, they sold Adam Lojek for 20 million, I believe, to Hoffenheim. And also Serdar Azmoun, Iranian striker, for 5 million to the United Arab Emirates. Overall transfer balance is only minus 20 million, which is not a whole lot for a double winner and a Europe League runner-up. And, of course, a future Champions League team. But I think they made a very good business overall and are well positioned to play another super successful season.
Yeah, I think you picked two good ones there. With Frankfurt, we will have to see how Topmöller can coach this squad in a way that they get their full potential out. And then, with Leverkusen, we shall see how they manage that Champions League that Champions League workload, so to say. It's a little bit more than playing in the Europa League. It's just different
Absolutely.
teams. You need to play on a different level every Tuesday and Wednesday night. So we shall see if they can be a contender for the title again, but definitely a very strong team. And with Xavi Alonso, everything is possible.
I agree. All right, let's continue with my two losers. And first up, I've got FC Augsburg here on the list. They lost their two of their top players, with Demirovic, who obviously was transferred to Stuttgart, but also the young Belgian talent Arne Engels was sold for, I believe, 10 or 11 million to Celtic Glasgow. They also sold Niklas Dorsch, a German midfielder, which I believe has a lot of potential. You may remember him from the under-21 Euro or World Cup a couple of years ago, where he performed exceptionally well.
Yeah,
and I believe
he went to Heidenheim, right? So
exactly, yeah.
He might just have a breakthrough there. Yeah.
I hope so.
Heidenheim just has that talent to pick up players that nobody has on the radar, and all of a sudden, they get the best out of them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Niklas Dorsch ends up being a huge loss for Augsburg. Yeah, so I agree with you on that.
I agree. I think with a bit more playtime, he can become a very strong Bundesliga player. So yeah, anyway, although Augsburg kind of made a lot of money with those transfers, in my view, the replacements don't seem to have the quality to fill those shoes. It's also reflected in the results so far of the first two Bundesliga match days. They were only able to collect 1 point and conceded 6 goals in 2 games. So yeah, the best deal they might have made this summer is the free transfer of Marius Wolf from Dortmund. Experienced player, can both be a left or right back and a winger at the same time. So Marius Wolf will be running up and down the right midfield for Augsburg this season. But bottom line, in my view, I see Augsburg fighting for relegation this year. Of course, alongside a number of other clubs, but I think their transfer summer wasn't great. The other team that I have here on the list is VfL Bochum. As you might have heard, they just secured a last-minute victory in the relegation game against Düsseldorf last season. And despite that, they didn't spend any money for new players this summer, which means, by experience, if you don't spend a single dollar on new personnel, you're going to have a hard time again this year. So Bochum already lost their first 2 Bundesliga games. They also got eliminated from the DFB Pokal against a club from the 3rd Bundesliga, or 2nd Bundesliga, my apologies, Regensburg, I believe they got promoted, in fact, but previously 3rd Bundesliga team. So nonetheless, they're out of the Pokal and the alarm bells are already ringing. They did sign, however, a few players which were free of charge or came on loan. For example, a former Netherlands international, Danny de Wit, which is Bochum's number 10, and Ibrahima Sissoko from Strasbourg. But nevertheless, I do see Bochum fighting for relegation this year, given that they basically haven't invested in any new permanent personnel.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Kevin Stöger, which I will discuss in my part later as well, their midfield engine, so to say, was a big loss for them. And those leaders, Stöger and also Riemann, that we discussed in one of our episodes, in episode 1, right. In fact, that's hard losses. And those transfers that you described, from my perspective, can't really compensate that. And Augsburg, to be honest, they're on the list every year to go down, and somehow they manage it. So we shall see. I feel like somehow they're going to pull it off again, even if they end up on 15 or 14. I don't have them on the list for direct relegation, but definitely not as strong of a team as maybe last season.
Yeah, right. All right, moving on to my question marks, which are the teams where I don't really know where they're going this year. First one on the list is Hoffenheim. a team that qualified for the Europa League last season. And in fact, ironically, this was Hoffenheim's most expensive transfer summer ever. They spent over 50 million euros for new players. Again, new record for the club. Although, in my opinion, most of these new players are pretty much no names, which were still relatively expensive with 8, 9, 10 million upwards. So to me, it's really hard to predict where their journey is going. Despite, as I said, a relatively successful season, their stadium remains very much empty. People in the region don't seem to be particularly excited or interested in the club. And that transfer window somehow reflects that. I believe they overpaid massively for Logic. So I just previously said it was a smart move by Leverkusen to sell him for 20 mil. But nonetheless, I don't know if he's worth it. He seems to be their new top striker alongside Andrej Kramaric. But yeah, hard to tell how he's going to perform.
And I think surroundings have a big impact also on how a player performs in a club and how loyal a player is to a club. So you mentioned this is not a stadium that fills up on the regular. Usually you have, 5, 10, sometimes 15,000 extra seats in an already small Bundesliga stadium that just fits 30,000 people. So just not a lot, a club with a lot of fans and followers. And you don't have, a lot of character in this team. The only two guys that I could really name and say they're loyal to Hoffenheim for a long time and like to play there, Oliver Baumann, the goalie.
Absolutely,
and Kramaric right up front, who's the top scorer, all-time top scorer for Hoffenheim now. But other than that, people they come and go. Coaches come and go. It's almost like, they use it as the next stage in their career to get some Bundesliga exposure. And then when they have a good squad together, they can make a run maybe for the Europa League or, any other European competition just because they got the money in the background. But the year after, usually they're tanking. So I expect them to tank this year. They lost Maxi Bayer to Dortmund, which was an important piece of the puzzle in the striker position last year. I don't think that Loschek can fill that completely. And then with the extra games in the Europa League, I think they're coming in more on the lower midfield of the table. But yeah, we will see and watch.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Last but not least, I have Freiburg on my list right here. And I pretty much have them on my question mark list almost every year. As usual, a very quiet transfer summer for Freiburg. As usual, they are not overdoing it. Although they've made a couple of regular appearances in Europe over the last few years, so I'm sure they earned a decent amount of money through their extra games, through European games on TV. So anyway, very solid management in Freiburg over decades already, even though they occasionally got relegated to Bundesliga 2. They just kept working, made their way back up, and are now a very solid piece of the Bundesliga puzzle. And usually also famous for their smart signings. So I believe, I'm not saying that it's a bad, or by saying it's a quiet transfer summer, I'm not saying it's a bad transfer summer. Again, I just think it's very difficult to predict what Freiburg's secret ambitions are. You never know. Is it going to be competing for a spot in the Europa League, or is it going to be a secure spot somewhere in the midfield? It's always hard to say with these guys.
I think the motto is more like keep calm and continue to play. So, they to the outside world, they're always saying, we're happy as long as we stay within the Bundesliga. I think they're more than just a contender of basically for not being relegated. They're a strong team at this point that can make Europe year after year, but they're just not communicating it to the public.
Yeah, true. So their top transfers of the summer are Eren Digci from Werder Bremen, And Patrick Osterhage, again, another important player who left VfL Bochum. So yeah, both rock solid players, but very difficult to tell. Are they going to take Freiburg back to Europe or not? The results don't really give an indication yet, but we will see. Big question mark, but nonetheless, I'm sure Freiburg should have nothing to do with the relegation fight.
Thanks, Alex. Actually, you mentioned Dinci right now as a addition to Freiburg from Bremen. As you might know, he was on loan in Heidenheim. So yes, guys, you heard right. I have to start off with Heidenheim again. They're one of my winners. We mentioned them in the past episodes already, and why we like them so much, and why we think it's so great what's happening there in Heidenheim. But you got to listen to these statistics. They lost Jan-Niklas Beste to Benfica, Kleindienst, their top scorer, to Gladbach, actually doing very well there as well right now. And Cesar and Dinci, again, who was on loan from Werder Bremen, now moved to Freiburg. And those guys accounted for 75% of their goals, so 38 of 50 goals. Yet, we're 5 games into the season. They played a couple of more games since they had the European Conference qualifiers. And they won all of their games. Cup, Conference League qualifiers, and the league teams. They're actually heading the league up right now. And yeah, due to new shooting stars that they're developing, such as Wanne, again, from great season with Elversberg in Bundesliga 2 last season, a Bayern loaner. Cienza from Ulm, which was playing third league last year, had a great performance in those first 5 games. So just got an incredible scouting as well. And then Pieringer, who, kind of was on the roster last year already, but always took the backseat to Kleindienst and is now in that number 9 role at Heidenheim. So then you have Dorsch that we mentioned earlier coming from Augsburg. So there's a couple of promising additions to the team. And here, when I say transfer winner, I'm not expecting them to come in 6, 7, or even higher next season again. They're playing the Europa Conference League. They're going to have Chelsea at home. Great European night. So for them, it's taking in that experience in Europe and making sure they don't have nothing to do with the relegation fight down to Bundesliga 2. So that's what their primary focus will be, and I think they can manage it. I think at the end of the day, Heidenheim is going to stay in, and we're going to see them compete next year in the first Bundesliga again. So that's why they're a clear winner for me, considering the small size of the city over there and just the budget that they have.
Yeah, look, I have to agree with this. I have a big respect for Heidenheim. Of course, it's a tiny stadium, and once again, the second Bundesliga year is always the toughest. But you can really tell how important it is to keep working with consistency, with the right attitude. Keep both feet on the ground and just do the work. You have the coach in Heidenheim is now there for over 16 years, I believe. And it's just, absolutely respectable what they've built there. And I have to say, I'm very much looking forward to see them play the Conference League this year. I think it could be a huge surprise to everyone. But nonetheless, the Bundesliga should have top priority. So these guys hopefully make it, and we will see a third year of Heidenheim in the Bundesliga.
Correct. Yeah, and my second winner that I have on the list here is Borussia Dortmund. They continue with their philosophy, Borussia Deutschland or Borussia Germany, which means their goal is that a majority of their players are also represented in a German national team. So they added Pascal Groß from Brighton at the beginning of the season, who also plays a big role in the German national team now after Toni Groß's retirement. They added Waldemar Anton as a center back, coming from Stuttgart with a great season last year and being the captain over there. Again, making it into the national team and serving as a backup there for Tah and Rüdiger in the European Championship. And then Maxi Bayer, which we mentioned earlier as well, a great addition from Hoffenheim. Also German national player now, German international. He actually got some minutes against Hungary the other day in the Nations League. So this is also one of the players with potential looking into the World Cup 2026 for Germany. And finally, they were also signing Stuttgart's Guirassy, who was the top scorer there. A little bit sad is that because of his signing, Niklas Füllkrug actually decided to leave the club and now joined West Ham United. So it's sad not to see Füllkrug in the Bundesliga anymore, but fans can still be excited for Guirassy. That's for sure. And on top, Alex mentioned it when we started this episode, Niklas Süle, which is undoubtedly one of the best center backs worldwide, I would say, if he's in his top shape. We saw countless games when he played for Bayern, when he played for Dortmund. Incredible Champions League performances on the highest level, also incredible performance on the German national team. But he's struggled for a long time with weight now. Apparently, he's a big fan of McDonald's. No
just
joke.
like all of us.
Yeah, I mean, he stated that publicly. He just likes to eat his burgers, and he was given his last chance this season at Dortmund. The management talked to him very clearly, very direct, and told him he has to get rid of these unhealthy habits. And he came back to training camp with 20 pounds less, and this seems to be in the shape of his life. So we will see where that goes, if he can really keep that up. And I think if he can, sooner or later we'll see him back in the German national team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, he's one of the 2-3 best defenders in Germany, if not in Europe. But to me, it's just super characteristic what you just explained about Niklas Süle. His story just reflects what in my view, Dortmund's problems were over the last couple of years. And that is, again, the consistency, or better said, the lack of consistency. You've seen so many players come and go, signings that I didn't really understand, like, Salih Özcan played a half-decent year, and now he goes out on loan. We see transfers like Felix Metscher from Wolfsburg, for who they spent 30 million euros, and he hasn't really played, to be absolutely frank. He hasn't played a significant role in that team. And now, again, 4 or 5 new players, big names coming in, a couple of big names leaving. I just see that there is a fairly high fluctuation in Dortmund. Füllkrug is the best example. I mean, from day one, scoring important goals for Dortmund and made his way into the German team. Now they sell him again after 2 years in the club. I would just hope that Dortmund gets a bit more consistent, and I believe that will also then pave the way back to the top of the Bundesliga table one way or another. So
agree.
Good luck to Dortmund.
Yeah, and you spoke about consistency, so we should also mention that Haller and Moukoko, who were supposed to be the big new guys in the attacking position, I think they're loaners now as well, right? And certainly loaning out Haller and Moukoko, with that they lost a little bit of flexibility. So, okay, let's move on to my question marks here. I have Gladbach on the list. First and foremost, I thought it will be a very difficult season for them. With Christoph Kramer, they just let a player out of the contract early that couldn't perform on top level anymore, but definitely had lots of loyalty to Borussia Mönchengladbach. He was 10 years at Borussia, had a very emotional goodbye video for those guys, again, that want to watch it on social media. It really shows how much passion he had for that club and how hard that was for him. And he was certainly a leader on and off the field. So that's going to be a loss for the locker room. But yeah, they had some promising transfers as well. Kleindienst Heidenheim again. Fit in very well. First game days, scored already. And Stöger from Bochum. Big loss again for Bochum, also discussed earlier. And yeah, their Bundesliga start was actual decent. I have to say, Alex, I'm not a big fan of their coach, Seoane. I know he has a very good reputation amongst managers in the league, but I didn't really like what he did to the team in Leverkusen. Remember, before Xavi Alonso came, he was a coach and he left them on 16 or something like that. That was a horrible season for Leverkusen. And then with Gladbach, he had a bad season last year as well. And I don't know, this guy, if you watch him on the sideline, he just doesn't show any emotion. He always has this, say the same face impression. And I would, let's say, I wouldn't be motivated if he would be my coach. So,
so it's
I'm curious to say where that goes. Yeah, certainly. So yeah. And second question mark is actually Stuttgart. I want to say I think they're going to be up there in the table again, competing for the Champions League, at least for the Europa League. But those first two games, they left a couple of question marks with me in my head. They gave away the win in Freiburg, and they also gave away the win against Mainz at home, where they were up 3-1 and the game ended 3-3. So they have some work to do, some coordination. Again, they lost a very good players as well. Anton went to Dortmund, Girassi went to Dortmund, Ito went to Bayern. But then they added good players such as Demirovic from Augsburg, Undav permanently from Brighton, Kretzik, a loaner from Bayern Munich, another big talent to watch also for the German national team going forward. And then a young talented forward with Woltemade, huge guy. This guy is probably 6'5" or so, a true number 9. So we can only hope as Germans that he develops and, in a similar fashion to Niklas Füllkrug, that he can help the German national team maybe going forward. They got Justin Deal, the big talent from Cologne, who certainly needs some time, but is also one of the future hopes. And then Jeff Chabot, who was probably the only guy at Cologne last season that played and performed on Bundesliga level. So a very great addition in the center-back position, taking over the role of Ito there. So again, a promising transfers for me in Stuttgart, but yet they have had a rough start in the season. That's why I have them under question marks here.
Yeah, I agree with you, and they would have probably also made it on my list of question marks. It's just, you can see that there are a lot of changes within the team, and I feel like they, even though their style of football is still incredibly attractive to watch, super nice offensive strategy, and I think the coach Hoeneß has a very clear plan where he wants to see this team and how he wants to see this team perform. But I believe they just need to kind of reorganize themselves internally, find together, find the way into this season right now before it's too late.
That is true. Okay, and that takes us to the losers category here. I also picked 2 losers, and one might surprise you a lot, Alex, but I have Bayern Munich on top of my list here.
All right.
Yeah, and I'll explain it to you. I mean, it's probably against any statistic again or forecast for the season. I just heard about this new AI tool player yesterday on a German football panel, and they're forecasting Bayern to win the Bundesliga with a 97% probability. So they pretty much are German champions already, but I don't know.
According to the statistics. Well,
yeah, exactly. According to AI. And I don't know if this on a personal level will actually come so quickly together there at Bayern. First, you had this whole coaching back and forth with, Company being number 6 or 7th on the list. Then you didn't really, from my perspective, sign any big name. Apparently, again, if you look at the statistics, Olise is by far the best transfer that Bayern did in a long time. But I remember last time Bayern was in a position like that when they had a titleless season. They signed Robben, so then you had Robben and Ribéry, who brought Bayern back to life. It was 2008 and 2009 where they suffered that Bundesliga loss against Wolfsburg when those two came together. But it's just the sound of Robben and Ribéry is just a different sound than Olise, which again for me, if I hear a transfer like this, okay, this might be a young talent, a young perspective that certainly has very good stats and can become someone, but it's not the same big name. And like when I heard, Harry Kane last season, I thought, oh my God, Bayern is back. They got Harry Kane now. So it just does something with your competitors if they hear those type of names. But for such a bad season last year, I feel like there was not enough, star power added to Bayern, for the lack of a better word. And on top of that, I don't see any local identification anymore at Bayern Munich. Those Bavarian guys, that team, that generation Wembley with Schweinsteiger, Lahm, Bartstuber, Müller, where I, as a non-Bayern fan, even said, hey, I really support this team. Also, as a German, I want them to win the Champions League, and I really think they have something there. There's identification, with Bayern Munich. But now I don't really see that. I didn't see that in a Gnabry. I didn't see it in a Goretzka or Sané, even though they're German national players. The only guys where I kind of have that feeling are maybe a Kimmich, maybe a Pavlovic, maybe a Musiala that give me a little bit of that feeling, but it's just not the same that generation Wembley. And I think this is what they have to work on again. And maybe they shouldn't loan out a Kretzig or a Wanner. On the other hand,
maybe they should give him a try.
Yeah.
Coaches, it's actually very good what you're mentioning right here, because coaches like Jupp Heynckes and first and foremost Louis van Gaal, they didn't shy away from putting these youngsters on the pitch. If it wasn't for Louis van Gaal, Thomas Müller would have probably not made his breakthrough, at least not so early.
Absolutely.
So, you're right. I don't really see that happening anymore.
And I have nothing against the Mathys Tell. I think this guy is great. He really also, he wants to break through at Bayern, and he's certainly a very talented player, but also not somebody that is common, out of the own Bayern academy, that is a young French player again, that was coming from some French academy. And I just don't understand why the German clubs are so lagging behind on their academies, and especially Bayern Munich with this Mir San Mir Bavarian identity. There should be just more Schweinsteigers, more Lahms, more of those type of players coming out of Bayern Munich again. And their strategy though seems to be like playing young or buying young talented player from abroad right now. So again, it's a clear lack of identification. And looking at the overall transfer period, including that whole saga around Jonathan Tah that we discussed last week, again, it was a weak transfer period in my eyes, and I don't know if this is going to come together at Bayern this year.
Yeah, absolutely. The story around Jonathan Tah was a big loss, big L for Bayern. Yeah, it doesn't seem that Bayern has the same, let's say, aura around the club anymore. So more and more players, and obviously also coaches, as we've seen this summer, are actually saying no to Bayern and are no longer interested in joining that club.
Yeah, Bayern fans, I think that's true. I have to agree with Alex here. But yeah, let's round this up real quick. This transfer special episode today with my last loser of the season or of the transfer period, which is St. Pauli in my eyes. Reason being is that St. Pauli's coach Schürzeler had a great contribution with his style of football last season. Not always very attractive, but lots of possession, kind of a slow playing style, regardless, they were the clear number one team in Bundesliga 2 last season, and very deserved promotion to Bundesliga 1. But then Hürzeler gets a call from Brighton, where he apparently copied his playing style from the former coach there, De Zerbi. And then took that deal and becomes a new coach of Brighton, leaving St. Pauli. And I think under Hürzeler, just a lot of players at St. Pauli were overperforming. And just looking at these first 2 games and no significant additions to the team compared to last season, I really see them struggling. And they're actually my number 1 team that I see relegating back down to Bundesliga 2.
Yeah, I think so too. And any St. Pauli supporters, please don't be mad. But I share your views on that 100%. And
Yo, Alex, and I think this brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope you guys out there enjoyed our first special episode of GFC. Next week, we are going to be back with our regular episodes covering all the actions of the 3rd game day in Bundesliga 1. And I believe it's already the 5th game day in Bundesliga 2 and 3 then. Yes, that's correct. So make sure you don't miss that. You tune in again. And we still need a couple of Spotify followers, guys. Amazon Music followers, Apple Music followers. So if you like this, make sure you subscribe to our channels. You leave us a like, you leave us a comment, and we really appreciate your support. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, if you believe that this podcast is worthwhile to support, please leave us a like, leave us a comment, get in touch, let us know what you want us to talk about, what you are interested in, and we will make sure to cover that in one of our upcoming episodes. So again, it's been a huge pleasure talking to you, Rick, and we'll be back next week. Take it easy.